All right, so this is the first bonus lesson about the Pledge Planner. The Pledge Planner is a complex document. As you can see here in the lower ribbon, there are several tabs. We will check one at a time, probably each one deserves a separate bonus lesson. But the first one is the most important, and it's called projection. Now, you will get instruction on how to download this file, actually how to add it to your own Google Drive, make a copy, and then you can start playing around with it. It's important that you make your own copy, otherwise you won't be able to edit the template. So, first of all, here on top, I added some instructions. We don't need to read them now. They are just helping you later on when I'm not here talking. And some indications, for example, this column here that mentions the buckets is just for you to make it easier for you to know where to put stuff. In my own copy of the file, I don't have this. To be honest, like this is exactly the same document I use at the moment, and it's the best version of the Pledge Manager I have ever done. Every time I use it, I try to improve it. So you're getting literally the same thing that I'm using. Another suggestion before we start, you are supposed to change only what's in the blue cells, and this, which I call matrix, that you can fill with green and red according to the rewards. I will explain in a moment. So, as I said, we'll focus only on the first tab, projection, and what are you looking at. So, first of all, this is where we want to put all the tiers you have in your campaign. At this point, if you've done module 1, you should know more or less what a tier is. Each campaign has between like 3 and 10 usually. They start very low. They can start as low as €1, $1, and they can go up until thousands of euros or dollars. So here on the side, I wrote the buckets. What does this mean is that you are supposed to, according to how you're planning to structure your campaign, we will see better how to do it in a future module, but you will go back to this later on. Let's say that you decided that, okay, your campaign is going to have 9 tiers. You can divide them according to how you're planning to price them. In buckets. So for example, I made some examples here. In the bucket that goes between 0 and €5, you decide that, okay, I will put something that I'll make like priced at €1. In the bucket between 6 and 10, I'll price something at 7. Here you will put the names of the tiers. Many campaigns have some kind of names that evoke some kind of thematic stuff, like, I don't know, hero, challenger, that kind of stuff. Or if you don't know how you're gonna name them yet, just write more or less what's inside each tier, even though exactly what is contained in each tier can be decided here on the reward matrix. And here, for example, you could have, instead of reward 1, you could fill in, I don't know, your name in the books. Reward 2, then you get the digital version of the book. Reward 3, a physical copy of the book. Reward 4, you get like a bundle of dice, etc. Right? And then according to the tier, you are supposed to fill a green cell if you're getting that reward at that price, or red one if you're not getting that. Now, for simplicity's sake, I just fill the first 9 of these tiers with some sample prices that fall within the buckets that you see here on the left. And for simplicity, I also made it so every subsequent tier adds 1 reward. This is not a typical situation. It is the most the simplest possible scenario. Because what you will find out is that, for example, if you have more than, let's say that you have 2 gaming books, right? And somebody is purchasing a digital version, you might have the first digital reward here and the second digital reward here. So you might have actually green, red, 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 and then another green here. So there might be gaps between 2 green cells. But for simplicity, I think this is clear enough that you just feel what rewards you're getting for that kind of price. Now, there is a column called the type, and this is helping you decide or determine if that kind of reward is going to be fully digital or the other option is mixed. Mixed means both digital and physical, or is completely physical, like you're not gonna get a digital version of something if you pledge for example this. You can decide that this is gonna be only physical and you're not gonna get the digital stuff. I never do that. I always try to give the digital version included with the physical, but there might be situations where you just simply can't give something in a digital format if it's something specifically physical, right? Then we have, like as I mentioned, here's the value that you're gonna have for that specific tier. Is that how much people are pledging for that tier. And here I have another column that says if the shipping is included or not. Now, I mentioned during the course that I do recommend that you charge the shipping later on after the campaign is done, and also because it makes the calculations here a lot easier. Why? Because if you decide to charge shipping during the campaign, you don't really have an easy way to fill this column over here, average shipping. Because according to the country of the backer, which you do not know in advance, you're gonna have a different number here. So just so that you can, if you really want to do that, here I have an average shipping column where you need to kind of figure out, okay, if somebody's paying 10, somebody's paying 40, what is the middle point? How many backers am I expecting from this country? How many backers am I expecting from that country? I do make those calculations because they're useful, but they're not very precise. So in general, I would recommend that you do not charge shipping during the campaign, so you don't have to worry about this yet. Here I mentioned, like, is shipping included? Yes, because for example these are just digital, so the shipping means delivering digitally the reward. Then the next column is the perk availability, and this means, like, can people pledge as many times as they want for this stuff, or there's a finite number of things. For example, you have exclusive limited edition of something, and there are only 50 copies, so in that case you will put limited and then the number of copies. Here I have an example with 99 copies. And here's a projected request. Projected request comes from the calculations that we will check on the research tab, and they are based on historical data of campaigns that are similar to yours. Now you can see already that, for example, there is some discrepancies here. There's going to be a limit of 99, but probably there's going to be a projected request of 259. So you know that in reality, if you only offer 99, the highest number here can be 99, because then people cannot buy it anymore and they have to spend money elsewhere. So just take every number with a grain of salt. I didn't continue after the ninth bucket, but you can see that it goes up quite a bit. And I mean, you can keep adding them, but basically if you're going over this number, it's just not very common, and it's not something I recommend doing. So you can keep adding stuff, but probably you shouldn't. And when you don't need some of these rows, you can just select them and delete them, and nothing happens. For example, if you know that you're not gonna have anything that is more expensive than 60 euros, then you can completely delete this part of the table. There are some manual things you need to do here because these calculations are complicated. But let's check this down here first, and then we'll see the right side of the table. So what do you have here? First of all, comparable campaigns. These are the campaigns that you're gonna use to give you an indication of how previous campaigns have been doing that you think are comparable to yours. So the idea here is that you put a link to the campaign so it's easy to reference. You put the name, what was their goal, what was their number of backers, and how much they raised. And also the year is probably important because if possible, you should try to refer to the last couple of years. It's not always possible. Sometimes it makes sense to go and pick a special campaign that was done 3-4 years ago. But in general, try to stay around the last 2 years because trends are changing, and I think you get better data if you check the last couple of years. Better numbers, and the market is more mature. So down here you can see, well, the sheet is calculating how many campaigns do you put here, and you can keep adding rows if necessary. How many campaigns is your sample composed of, and the more you have that are relevant, the better it is. You need to be very careful. Just pick campaigns that are actually relevant for you, that have a similar audience, have a similar number of backers to what you're thinking. They have a similar structure, they have a similar number of tiers, or the tiers are priced in a similar way. The theme of the game is similar. Just don't pick campaigns that have done super well if you don't think you can get there, because then you're just fooling yourself and you are actually skewing all these calculations in a way that is not healthy for, I mean, you're gonna feel happy right now, but then not in a few months, right? So here I mentioned there's an average of, okay, from this sample of campaigns, what is the average amount of backers, and what is the average amount of money they raised. Again, the more campaigns you have, the more precise this number is going to be. One thing I do usually is that I take a campaign that performed really bad and one that performed really well, because then they kind of balance each other out, and that's a good thing you can do. But just know your limits, and if the campaign is performing way out of your league, just don't pick it. And then, well, this is a recent addition I did, because one thing with this sheet is that it tends to underestimate how well you will do. And this has been a bit of a constant. It's always like every time I used it, or every time I help somebody with this, they've been doing better than what the calculation were saying. So for this reason, I added now a range of how well you can do. And this is the number I've been using until now. This is what the crunching the data gives as an outcome, and this is actually what is closer to what happens in reality. But I've always been a strong believer that you need to work with the worst possible scenario, because it's much easier to work with bad numbers and do a lot better than working with numbers that are just not realistic and then figure out, oh, I really fooled myself there. So this bracket means that probably you're gonna do at least this number of backers, but it might go up until this number. And the multiplication factor here is 1.64 based on my experience with my own campaigns and other campaigns. Again, work with a lower number because that's how you get a successful campaign. Do not take for granted that you're gonna get the higher number. Here you can set the goal of your campaign, and then the sheet will tell you, okay, how many backers do you need to fund, and what is the average, like if you get this number. Actually, this is working with the lower number. If you get this number of backers, how much will they pledge on average? Now, my experience is that this number is much higher because, again, I mentioned it somewhere else, these calculations do not take into account what's inside the tier, what are people getting. It's just looking at the numbers. So it is very likely that this number will hover around 50 to 60 to 65 euros, which in dollars is probably around maybe 60 to $70. Yeah. It is good to have this indication, so you know that if you actually get this number of backers, this is at least how much they are backing each. But it's gonna be fine if you're gonna have less backers and that they back more, right? And in my opinion, you should try to aim to have an average here that is about 60 euros. So probably around $70, yeah? All right, so let's move to the other side of the table. Why we're doing all this stuff? Because once you have the numbers in the research tab, we will check it later. But once you have the numbers, you will get this projected request. This projected request will tell you that okay, at this price, €1, probably we're gonna get 17 backers. How much are we gonna get out of the out of this 17 backers? How much is the tier overall revenues? Now you can see some discrepancy here because these numbers are not like if we go really check, this is something like more like 16 point something. So you know that, for example, out of let's see, this is a wrong example. Out of these 70 backers that back at 49 euros, you're gonna get about 3,430. If that is true, this is how much in fees you're gonna pay Kickstarter for that specific tier. And then here you can add, okay, what do you think is this average shipping for somebody who backs at that level? This number is hard to come up with. I usually set it around 16 euros, counting Europe and US and other areas of the world. It might be higher depending on who is your audience. One thing you should do here is that starting to think, okay, how much does it cost me? How much does it cost me to make one full package that contains everything that is in this tier? Because once you've done that, and you also put in other costs that could be storage costs or packaging costs or something else, you will get a total here of how much all the stuff is gonna cost, and then basically you can calculate your margin. And according to your margin, the color of these cells will change, and as long as it's green, your margin is good. Otherwise, when it turns yellow, maybe you should look if there are ways to improve it, to improve the offering. So you go back here and say, okay, should I really give this reward at this price, or maybe do I keep it for a higher level? The idea here is that you look at each row and think, does it include everything in the previous tier? And it is the case here. It is the case here, as we structured this matrix this way. So if this costs you one euro to make, then maybe the next one will cost you 5. Then the other one will cost you, it contains everything in the previous one, then maybe 7. If it the next one will cost you I don't know, 10, etc. Right? So you will see that probably if this costs you €1 to make and you get €1 for it, bad idea. Like, you really don't want that. Okay. This one, this is not bad, but you could probably do better. So can you bring this production cost down to, I don't know, 8? Yes, you can. Still yellow. Can you bring it down to 6? Yes. Okay. Now it's green. That's probably a better price that you should. So how can you make that price go down? Even 7, right? So always remember that if you need to add the price of the previous tier if it does include all the stuff included in the previous tier. Down here we have like a total of how much is your overall revenues, how much are the fees that Kickstarter is going to charge, and here's the what are you probably going to get out of the campaign. And then down here you have the projected cost for the rewards, how much making exactly that number of rewards is going to cost you. Now this is an important thing you should keep in mind, because the exact number is probably not the number that you will end up making. Very often there are some kind of baseline, a baseline number of items you need to produce. So if you have 300 orders, but the baseline order is 500, then you know that you will be stuck with 200 items that somehow you need to sell later on. So this projected cost of rewards is just for the exact number that the projection is telling you that you're gonna sell. Keep that in mind, because then we have in another tab, we will look at the balance sheet, and that will help you understand exactly your real expenses when you keep into account the minimum amount of items that you need to produce. I think this is enough for as an overview for the projection. One thing I forgot to mention is that we also have add-ons here. Like if your campaign is gonna have add-ons, you can add them here as a reminder of what you're actually offering. I think they're not using any calculation, but they're a good reminder. So I think this is enough for now, and the next lesson will cover the research tab, which is very important to fill the data in the projection tab.